increase on this property was because of the Gauteng. Beyond 10 kilometers, we felt uncomfortable with being able to calculate detail, because you are now clutching straws. It's like us saying that this particular mall was built because of, it's on the same route as the bus and things like that. It sometimes is only coincidental. So I loathe venturing into, what do they call it, into dealing with that question.
Okay.
Let's deal with the questions in the room. There's a question here. Somebody's
gentleman here next.
Sorry, I think we're a bit remiss, everybody in this room. Our deep sympathies with your loss.
It's fine. Thank you, sir.
Morning. I think everybody will agree that. We're quite a nice community, actually.
Thank you, sir.
What I'm stunned at is that you talk about a feasibility study. Now, I've lived in this area for 30 years, as most of us have lived for many, many years in this area. The amount of traffic, the amount of taxis, the amount of restrictions in terms of movement with bad robots, etc., etc. Why on earth does the feasibility study come up that is beneficial to the government, that you run a rapid rail service, destroying communities, and not spend that money on something a little bit more useful for the general population of the areas of Oliver? I'm not discounting anybody. I'm saying everybody in this community is being affected.
There's a lady there that has been raising her hand in the purple shirt. So I hear you say, so there's always priorities, and we always look at these things in their layers. And by its nature, my role as a management agency is for me to look at rapid rail studies. Now, one of the things that we've done, and I hear somebody shouting there at the back about, is that when we built the new Cosmo station down on the bottom there, what we've done with it is we've agglomerated all government spending to be able to make sure that it then benefits the area in and around the station. And we will build all sorts of housing in that area that allows integrated communities to be created around our stations. Now, I'd love, and what do they call it? And we speak to all our sister agencies, such as the Johannesburg Rate agencies and everybody else that we work with. And we did consult them that if we were to go in this route, would that be beneficial to the things you're dealing with at the current moment? And most of them said yes, it would be beneficial in that manner. I do understand that at the current moment you have particular challenges that relate to traffic lights, that relate to potholes, and all of that. I wish all of that was in my mandate, because I would have dealt with it differently. And I'm not passing up the buck. I'm just simply saying I do recognize that. I am an arm of government that deals with the rapid rail and rapid rail expansions. I'd love to, what do they call it, to go more into the issues that relate to what has happened in this area. Our idea is that instead of you driving away from here, can we provide the type of transport that allows you to quick province? That is our look. And remember, it's, what do they call it? It's like a crystal. If I put it on this side, you see one side, I see another side. And in itself, from that perspective, that is what I am looking at, and I'm looking at creating the level of mobility. I used to live here. I used to live out in Belgium. And I moved out of here because once I had to go and pick up my child, and it was dark like this at crash. And we used to work on the other side of, what do they call it, of town with my wife at that point in time. And I chose, I moved to Midrand when? I moved back here in 2004 in Johannesburg. I moved to Midrand in 2007, 2008. Because at that point in time, Belgium was already unworkable. And the amount of houses and development that has been brought into this area here at the back does warrant for us to be able to look at an alternative solution to be able to take people out of here. And I still say, what do they call it? The challenge that we have is us being able to create services that, one, are reliable, two, that you can bank on that they will function properly, And we have been comfortable to say that our service can do that. But if, what do they call it, if the community feels that's exactly what they don't want, we are also comfortable with that in the sense that there is a greater need in this Western sector to be able to have, what do they call it, a rapid rail network out here. We see it like that. You might not see it like that because as it is right now, we're looking at the immediate issues, and I'm comfortable with it, and I'm not discounting your issues. I'm just simply saying, thinking 10, 20 years from now, this will be a, what do they call it? The same way I moved out of Velgevel in 2007, it's, what do they call it? We are heading into a big issue that will come up, and we are trying to plan ahead.
I'd like to invite you and your team to come and spend a week in Sharonley. We are people with emotions. We're not related by blood, but we're family. There is a dark cloud hanging over Sharonley at the moment. A few years back, we were nominated the safest suburb in the north of Johannesburg because of the community that we have built. It's going to be destroyed. Are we going to be compensated for land? Are we going to be compensated for emotional abuse? This is emotional abuse because you are not telling us the day it's going to start and the day we're going to be thrown out of our homes. That period is emotional abuse. Are we going to be compensated for that? And I'm sure everybody will want an answer to that question.
Okay. Can I take the question from the lady behind you? She's been trying to raise her hand for a while.
Thank you very much for hearing us tonight. Somebody mentioned talking about restart of economy. That was your words or the other gentleman. They mentioned fully funded and they mentioned restart of economy. I'm looking at this lady that wants to move to Cape Town. I'm looking at the lady that's just spoken now. I read in the papers 2026 you want to start this project, correct me if I'm wrong. 4 years away. Is this lady going to be able to move to Cape Town and sell? Will you buy in my area? You haven't answered that question. Does any of your staff live on a route that the Gautrain is now on? You're talking about 200 meters each way, 400 in total. That's the plan. Never mind the 80. Do you know how wide that is? That is ripping the entire property through that property. There's a gentleman there that is part of a community where they spent, I think, quote me if I'm wrong, 90 security cameras. This lady talks about a safe area of the devastation of replacing those cameras. Do you know that the insecurity that it'll bring from not corrupt, never mind corruption, from security at night starts? I'm told, correct me if I'm wrong, that this route might rip through Sharonley Primary School, that it could rip through businesses. You talk about fully funded. Currently, in fact, 2019, I read in the paper that the government is subsidizing the Gautrain to the tune of about 1.82 billion per annum at the moment. And we're looking at 80 kilometers that's already been built. We're talking about another 150 kilometers. What kind of subsidy from the government, where we are so under-economized at the moment and battling with the unemployment rate, are we now looking for subsidy from the government? And then finally, and not last, the workers' affordability. Let's call them what they are, the workers that can't even afford the taxi today because of the petrol price. How on God's earth, excuse my French, are they going to afford the Gautrain? Or is it only for the rich and famous? Thanks.
Can I deal with the lady? She asked me a couple of questions. I might not remember everything once you, what do they call it? So, ma'am, without discounting what you said, and the lady that spoke before, I am comfortable with what they call it with. I live in a gated community. I have actually chosen to be, probably for the last 10 years, a director as part of those gated communities. We've spent, millions. I mean, we spent it twice on cameras and protecting ourselves and lots of other things. So I don't come from a tree. I come from a community. What do they call it? And sometimes when we're speaking to each other, we speak to each other as if I don't come from a community. I come from a community. And I come from a community where I actually live on the boundary wall. And I have chosen to be on that board year on year on the basis of the fact that I feel strongly about security and what do they call it, and how I feel about those things. So it is something I understand very well and I'm comfortable with. Now, I also understand that we all are at the current moment sitting with a challenge, and the lady at the back has raised numerous issues. And as I said to you, we are dealing with, what do they call it, with the process where we have to make sure that the detailed design comes up, and we then clearly designate this is the land and the houses that are going to be affected in itself. All we have right now is a single line. But I have also been the first one to acknowledge that the manner in which we put that out according to the law has not been the best one on what do they call it, to create the impact that is there. And I am the one who's willing to take it away and make sure that, what do they call it, we correct the perception that we've created and manage it accordingly as it is. Now, as it is, ma'am, the transport in itself, we have considered numerous iterations of the ticket pricing as it is right now for the Gauteng. In actual fact, one of the things that delayed our Treasury approval one was that the Treasury did ask if we were going to decrease the prices. And we did say to them, if we decrease the prices, this is what it means. If we, what do they call it, if we increase the prices partially, and we've gone with what is called a targeted subsidy. And the targeted subsidy will pick out certain communities that are viewed as being in particular LSMs, and we would create a pricing that then allows it for it to be affordable. We are actually looking at trying to pilot that on the current system as it is, and then we will take it forward as part of the next part of the system in itself. We also have to be comfortable with one thing. The system has remained as it is, as reliable, as functional as it is, because it is, what do they call it? It is, first and foremost, it's not about funding other systems less. It's about funding a system the right way. And what we've done over the years is that we've underfunded a lot of our public transport. Public transport in itself, we've always looked at it being cheap and nasty. We have created a model for how to, what do they call it, to make public transport palatable to yourselves. And we want to make sure that beyond making it palatable and be useful to, what do they call it, to the ordinary man in their SUV, can we actually make sure that then it is also affordable to the workers that go to those communities and from those communities. And those are the things as we go forward now. And as I said, we are looking at piloting with particular stations on our line as it is right now. And we have considered a whole lot of other issues that have been raised. And I am comfortable that we're sitting in a look, you know, even when a marriage starts, it starts a bit rocky. This is a partnership, and we're going to work with each other to be able to find the best solution ever possible, both for the Gauteng and for Sharon Lee itself, and for us to be able to jointly communicate accordingly and do away with certain perceptions that have been created by us following the law. Victor is an engineer. He follows process accordingly. For what do they call it? For following process accordingly. But I'm not going to do that. He's doing it under my instructions. So let's continue. Ma'am, you have another question.
I've lived in the area for 27 years. When back in the day we were like the Wild West here. We literally came together as a community out of our own pockets. Our I'm down in Sharonlee Daddy, so,
Yeah.
and I'm the area agent for our houses. We came together, we palisaded it, we've got our cameras, we've got our booms, all out of pockets, money out of our pockets. With your saying that you just drew a line, that damage to our area has already started. If you go into property 24 now, the Olivedale retirement home, you could not get a property there. It's listed, house after house. The old folk trying to get out now. Not at the prices they should be getting, at the prices they bought, just because there's so much property flooding the market from our area. We have fought in our little area to get our prices up. We have maintained our roads, we have maintained our parks, we have communities, sorry.
I'm listening.
Okay.
I get distracted.
We maintain our rivers, we do everything, we've had no government help. So that's why we are a passionate community, and that's why I'm a passionate estate agent for our homes, because I know what we are doing. But by doing your little line that you say that they just drew and you were following law, has already damaged our property. And you are saying that this could take another 12 months before this line is given to us in direct, that this is where it's happening. That our properties are depreciating in that 12 months. Because no one wants to come to Sharonlee, which was voted by Carte Blanche one of the safest areas, where our kids can walk around. We have made an estate living, and I understand, sir, that you are in your own gated community. We are talking for ourselves here. That we have fought for 27 years to get our property prices up, to get our community, and just that little line has destroyed our community, that we have already got people leaving at prices that are not market related. They just want to get out. And where do we actually go and buy? Because now if you go to Four Ways, there's going to be another cow train coming through. That should all be laid out. But sorry, I'm just so passionate about our area, and that you just referred to a line that has literally destroyed our property prices. We're all sitting in limbo for 12 months. Do we put solar panels on our roofs? Do we put new carpeting? Do we carry on living, or do we get the hell out of Sharonlee? That's now, it was a top little neighborhood.
Can I take another question? I've taken, what do they call it, the issues you've raised, ma'am, and let's deal with it as we continue.
Yes, I'd just like to know if the route to the north of the library has ever been considered.
Shange, north of the library. Hmm? Okay.
No, it's not in the that side. It's the Olivedale Shopping Centre and Hospital.
Okay. All right.
My question is, well, I've got two questions. The one is along similar lines to the one the gentleman has just asked. The original proposal had 3 routes in it. One of those routes ran up a servitude going north of the library. Surely using government servitude land is far cheaper than expropriating private property. I'd like to understand what the reasons were for disregarding. The second question I have is around stations. Tonight we're talking about the line specifically running from Randburg to Cosmo City, and Sharonlee is in the middle of that. Anyone living in Sharonlee would need a vehicle to drive to one of those stations to actually use the Gautrain. So it doesn't really seem feasible at this stage to make use of that transport. Are there plans for additional stations to be added onto that line? And if so, when would that be phased in?
Okay. So let me start with the last question. So stations by their nature on rapid rail, we try and keep them apart by between 7.5 and 10 kilometers. It's all based on the graphic ramp up of the train and the ramp down, so the stopping. So a train is not the kind of thing you can just stop. So it takes about probably 1.5 kilometers for us to ramp up to top speed and then cruise through, and then to ramp down, it takes us another 1.5 kilometers. So effective running kilometers are actually give or take about 7 kilometers in that 10 Ks. For us to be able to ramp up faster on half a K, we would have to have the entire train motorized. I'm saying motorized, like every wheel will have to, what do they call it? And that's a much more noisier vehicle than we prefer to have. Our current vehicle is 75% motorized, and as we go forward, we're looking at going back to 50%, but with a smaller vehicle that then allows us to save power. So that is the only challenge with putting a station here in the middle, because then it doesn't become rapid rail. It's stop and start the whole time. Now, the issue of the, what do they call it, and I'll take it back. What do they call it? I am aware that there was a route that was running through the servitude there in the back, and I will take it back to, what do they call it, to go and look at it in detail, unless Engineer Shange can, what do they call it, can answer. I don't think he can answer immediately. We will come back to you, ma'am, and I will consider the, what do they call it, the route in itself as it is. Ma'am, I take your, what do they call it, your comments, and I have, and you know, sometimes we sit in meetings and they say, it's a recorder. It means I didn't hear you. No, it's not a recorder, ma'am. I feel your passion, and the same way I'm as passionate as you are about my community. I take what you've just said, and we will work with, what do they call it, with the processes as we look through this to be able to see how we take it forward.
Tsepo. Is this one back on?
You can use this one.
Okay. So I think you can definitely take it away that this community is not going to be a walkover. We're not going to get pushed over. We're not going to get dug over or dug under or think. We're going to communicate, and we're going to take it right to the end for everything. So the concern, and you did mention the process of public participation and all that. And it concerns me that in an extra B that was on the Gauteng website published in May, the initial comments by interested and affected parties in this whole community, according to your system, was only 57 objections received. Now we know for a fact that there was about 2 notes more on that 57. What happened to all our comments? And are we just going to get pushed under the side? How do we know that the comments that we make and the submissions that we make are actually being taken seriously and they're being looked at? Because this just tells us that 57 people or 57 complaints by interested and affected parties was received. So please, how are you going to tell our community that you are actually taking seriously the objections and the concerns that we're going to have?
Thank you, sir. And I will reiterate it. I am here on a day that I'm not supposed to be working. So that means I am taking you seriously. If that is not good enough for you, I don't know what's going to be. But let's go back to the issues you're raising. I did query that issue. So when the issue was first raised, I think it was that lady there that we met there in Machalis and the gentleman here. I looked at it in detail. I recognized, or what they call it, there was a clustering made, and it was a mistake, and I take it for what they call it for what it is. A clustering, so particular type of questions that look the same were clustered together to create the 57 that was there. So it was similar accounts of what they call it of issues. It is a pure rookie mistake from what they call it, from our consultant, and I take that back. It was a pure mistake. So we are comfortable with the issue, and we've logged all the questions that have come through. We've continued with the system as open as it is right now, despite the fact that we needed to, at some point in time, be able to shut down process and then start running the law. We are continuing with the process that I'm running with now, to be able to enable everybody to still have a fair share of what do they call it, of saying what their issues are. And it is better that we find out now and we, what do they call it, and we deal with the issues rather than dealing with each other in court. So I am more comfortable that, what do they call it, that we will be able to deal with each other. Nobody assumed that anybody is going to be a walkover, and I think we didn't come here assuming that. I came here, I asked for an appeal because I've been in these things where people didn't live with their shirts. So I asked for an appeal knowing very well that these things get emotional and they do also get violent. Because I'm comfortable with it. It is a difficult job, but I choose to be able to communicate directly with the communities rather than communicating with you through the courts.
Okay, sorry. No, sorry, we've got this gentleman back there.
Sorry, I just made some notes as we were going along, if it's all right, and hopefully I can... Sorry. I just made some notes as I was going along, and hopefully that I can just go through them. Firstly, again, condolences to you, and thank you for making the effort to be here with us today. I really appreciate it. I'm one of those people that's been impacted. I've put my house on the market about 2 months ago, just before it all sort of fell apart, and I've watched the pricing drop. So I'm well aware as one of the people in the community facing what we are. Well, I have a few questions about this that we're going through. One is why but it's not really questions that you can answer, I don't believe, because you're managing a project. And I come from a rail background as well. Just to give a bit of background, I've worked in the UAE as a commercial manager and claims manager running their projects there. I've worked in Hong Kong on 2 or 3 project lines out to the airport. Worked in Guangzhou with the implementation of their systems. And I've worked in China and Hong Kong and London. So I've been in various rail projects. And with all the rail projects that I've worked on, there's always been an overarching program, and it's been a social program. We need a rail because we've got social stuff happening here. We've got people and we need township. We've got a commercial environment here and we need a rail system to do that. And every program, every project that I've worked on anywhere in the world, there's always been an overarching program, and I don't see that here. I see us rushing out and building a railway from somewhere out into the middle of nowhere. And that's my question is, what's the driver behind this? And then, there's all the other stuff that comes onto place. We've done concept design at this stage, I'm assuming, so you must have got to a budget of some form, which you've put forward to the MEC for him to give go-ahead on. And then you will go into procurement and designs of various formats moving forward from there. But with the budget you put forward to the MEC must have taken into account certain things moving forward. And what we've seen of it is a railway line running at grade through our suburb, and not just our suburb, but the other suburbs up the way. So it's, there's the whole of Randburg is going to be impacted with this, at various projects happening at grade. And that makes no sense. So you're either going to have to go back to the MEC with a huge budget increase, or there's a problem in the planning as it sits at the moment. And these are my questions. Sorry, Sean.
So, first and foremost, the first question you asked, I'm comfortable with what you've just said. So, the Gauteng was actually initiated as an economic impact project. That has always been the point of the Gauteng. The study I was referring to has shown that in and around all the most of the stations, we have the ones that have been sterilized by property owners such as Midrand, because Midrand, the gentleman said it was designed, it was moved a little bit. Midrand was designed 7 times because All Mutual couldn't make up their mind about where they wanted it because the Osizweni land that they own in and around Midrand. But all the other stations, what you'll see around it is that we've allowed property development to occur by itself. In the next while, what we're doing is we actually have, we drive the actual property development. We've actually set up a unit within our, what do they call it, our organization that will look after that directly. So it goes beyond just it being an economic development. It's about us now being able to impact areas ourselves and do them in such a way that it is in benefit of the community and in benefit of, what do they call it, of the areas in and around there. So there isn't anything amiss here about how the Gauteng was initiated. And the economic impact assessments that we've done were always to be able to check, did our original objectives, were they met? And we are comfortable with it that all of them were met through and through. And I'll share, what do they call it, we'll share the report with JC, and he will, what do they call it, he will distribute that, both reports that were done. The second one, we're really happy about it because not only because of the outcome, but it was done by a very reputable company that actually created what's now referred to globally on economic impact as the Manchester Report. The gentleman, Darren Witcher, who actually was the project manager for the job, actually did, what do they call it, the Manchester Report. So we are comfortable with the second report that it actually gives us detail that we are comfortable about. Now, going on to, what do they call it, to the areas, for me, as I said, communication has been the weakest point at which Mr. Shange said these lines are at grade. And unless I didn't see that memo and it didn't go past my desk, and as I say to you, it's a communication issue. It as the lady refers to it, a little line that had been drawn without explaining that this line is, you know, is it a tunnel? Is it a, what do they call it? So we have multiple iterations of where the line could go, and all of that. And we have failed. Being honest and upfront about it, we failed in communicating the detail of what happens where. So, and that I take it, what do they call it, I take back, and I will be able to see how we manage this thing going forward so that we make sure that we deal with it accordingly. It was never our intent, and those were the questions that we asked when, what do they call it, when the lines were drawn. What are you going to do with this community here? Where does the line go here? I mean, just a simple thing was, when you depart Sandton, we're departing from a tunnel. Where does that line show up so that it ends up in tunnel again in Randburg Station? Or, you know, all of these things are considerations that have come through. In dealing with, as I said to you, the process, and, you know, sometimes as an engineer you assume, look, this is the initial bit of it, the detail will come later, but recognizing what has happened here is that we should have communicated better in being able to explain that there's a fair bit of a process that will continue from here onwards, and none of these lines are set as being at grade.
But so who compensates these sellers who are going to take a knock of 300,000 to 500,000 on their property because it wasn't discussed and communicated? Because I can tell you that's what's going to happen for the next 12 months while everyone sits in limbo. Their prices for Upper Sharonese, they go from about 2.6 to 2.8. You're going to get an offer now of 2.2. That's not what their prices are valued at. So who compensates them for this loss when it was your officers that made that error of drawing that up?
Ma'am, you know, sometimes with these things, and that is why government officials come out here and they don't, or they don't engage at all. Is that no? I'm okay with that. Is that a person then now wants to now pin you down to make a decision, and all of that. But I am comfortable with the issues you are raising, ma'am, and I am comfortable with the fact that there has been an impact that goes beyond everything. Let's say we went to court right now on the issue you've just asked me. The worst of all that will happen is that the judge would look at the law and ask me if I've followed due process. And that would be the unfair bit in the conversation. I am trying to get us to a point where we actually start fixing what has happened because we followed the law. I'm just simply saying.
Like you get defamation of character, it's like defamation of our neighborhood. We have been injured by this, by the process.
Okay.
So, and I understand we're going to be injured even more once Gauteng comes right through our lounge. But right now, the people that are selling are injured.
Okay. There's a lady there that's been trying to ask a question. Can I?
I just want to point out, if you look at the option going north, the northern route which was, or way which was mentioned here, you've got two other communities to accommodate. That is Olivedale Retirement Village, and then on the other hand, Amsterdam. So if you don't go the tunnel way, you're going to have the same problems there, because we also have houses in there and apartments, etc., which can, all the problems that has been mentioned here will be duplicated there. That's the first thing. So I'm just making you aware of it. And then secondly, I think what the people want here, they want time frames. And will it be possible to give us time frames for the whole process? We saw the process, but there's no coupling with time frames, and I think that's a big problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you for highlighting the issues that relate to the other communities that are there, and we've taken it into consideration. We will make sure that, what do they call it, we lay out a time frame so that everybody is clear about what's going to happen when. I am comfortable with that, and I'd like to do that. Yes, sir.
Sorry to come back again.
You don't need to be sorry, sir. This is about your livelihood and your home.
Yes. Firstly, thank you for coming and actually answering our questions. And sorry for your loss as well. The first point that I just wanted to find out now, when it comes to your whole, from experience, obviously looking at how you've handled your previous projects, in terms of compensation, unfortunately, some of us have not lived long enough in our houses. We just recently moved. So obviously the value of the property, or the value of the purchase price of the property, is at what market value was when I moved in 3 years ago. And obviously that's going to be impacting in what value you are going to give, because most likely you're going to look at what municipalities looking at their bills, and that's definitely different from what I purchased. So from your experience, how do you maneuver that in terms of looking at what I have from a bank perspective in terms of my bond? Do you also take that into consideration when there's a financial compensation as well, and also looking at any other costs that will be involved in that? Then my second question that I also have...
So let me answer the first question first.
Oh, okay.
So remember, the debt that sits on that house, even if I pay you less, the debt still sits there. So who keeps the bank whole? So by its nature, I would still need to keep the bank whole, which then... Can I explain? Say, can I explain? Up and above everything else, on most of the routes that, what do they call it, and a lot of them were farmlands, we paid above market evaluated level, and in addition to that, all those formulas Victor was showing you, that if there's this additionality and this and that goes on with all of that, and any improvements that have been brought through, we will pay the additional amounts, and any other amounts that, what do they call it, that is brought through in front of you, and we will consider it as part of the pot. In essence, because once we've taken the land and we want to own the land in that way, it becomes very difficult to do what he was saying that, what do they call it, the banks would do on particular farms, because we have to have, so remember what sits over there sits the line. On that line sits a service, and on that service sits a contract to operate that line. So the straight line to the right to be on that property needs to be maintained. And in essence, the ability for us to be able to do certain things would become very difficult. And we did find from, as you say, from experience that it was better to pay above market value and what do they call it, and compensate people for fair things, you know. And I still say fair things because in certain cases we did have, what do they call it, we did have a gentleman says, I was thinking of building a swimming pool. And we said, okay, right now the house does not have a pool. He says, but I was thinking of building it. Can you compensate me for the house with a pool in it? And it became very difficult because eventually I am guided, I am, what do they call it, I'm still governed by the PFMA and the gentleman that was asking about corruption and all sorts of other things. So suddenly I've paid you for a pool you were thinking to build. And explained in the Zondo Commission that you were thinking of building a pool, so I've paid you for it. What was going on? And people then accuse me that, you know, the money that was there for the pool then went in the background. Now, say, I'm still saying, like, we within fair value and within us being able to have the conversation on you being able to say, I'm settling this house, I'm selling it, or this and that, and everything else that is fair. We would make sure that we keep you hold.
The second point, I actually don't want to sound like a parrot for, you know, political organizations or repeating questions that have already been brought to your attention already. Now, when we're talking about, you know,